Welcome to Devine Intervention, shedding light on Illinois property tax.
Hello and welcome to Devine Intervention, shedding light on Illinois property tax with Nora Devine. Nora has been a property tax attorney in private practice since 2005. She has developed a statewide practice in all jurisdictions in Illinois, and she represents all property classes. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is Unlocking Savings, how preferential assessments can reduce your property taxes. Nora, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, let's start here. What are preferential assessments?
Preferential assessments are a departure from the normal way of assessing property. And in Illinois, the normal way to assess property is based on what it could sell for. So there's 102 counties, and in 101 counties, all of the properties are supposed to be assessed at 33.33% of their fair market value. And loosely, the fair market value is what it could sell for if it were offered for sale. So a preferential assessment means that it's not going to be assessed pursuant to market value. It's going to be assessed pursuant to something else. And so you have a lot of different categories that you can fall under, especially for land. And so that's what I was hoping to talk about today.
Yeah. So what types of properties typically qualify for preferential assessments in Illinois, and what criteria must property owners meet?
Well, sometime in the mid to late 70s, Illinois was among one of the many, many states that began to treat farmland in a preferential way for tax purposes. And there's obviously, global economic and also national reasons for why the 70s were the time to start doing this. But essentially, most of the states in the U.S. do have preferential assessment for farmland. So I would say farmland is by far, in a way, the biggest category of preferential assessment that we have. And it means that if it has categorization as farm, then that means the preferential assessment is going to apply rather than the market value assessment. A preferential assessment for farm is really complicated. The Illinois Department of Revenue offers a 1 or 2 day course on how farmland is assessed. It's really complicated. We have a farm assessment board here, FATAB, and they are the ones who decide what the productivity is of the soil. And I don't really know how they do this. I'm told that in the 60s, they were actually out there in their rubber boots and they were making borings and they were analyzing the soil and they were deciding this one's productive and this one not so much. And so you have these really complicated maps where, you could see, over here we have this productivity and just under there it's less productive. And down in the south of the state, it's less productive than it is in the north. So the productivity index can vary between north and south as far as how productive they have decided the soil is. So that's how they assess farm in Illinois. So that's one category of preferential assessment. Another category is open space. And open space means that it's assessed in a way that keeps the land open and not developed. So this is land that is located in a place where the per acre value for redevelopment purposes is probably high, and so high that if you tax it at that, then they would probably have to sell the land to somebody that was going to develop it. And so in order to keep the land open and open for the birds and the streams and the trees and everything else, you need to give it a preferential assessment in order to give the taxpayer some kind of a protection from the economic forces that would basically tax you out of the land and force you to have it developed, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. It does, yeah.
So we're talking about corporate campuses. So I don't know when's the last time you've been in Chicago?
It's been a minute, probably about 5-6 years.
So, have you ever been to the McDonald's corporate campus in Oak Brook?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example of open space.
Okay.
So they put the land in at an advantageous value per acre in order to allow the corporate user to utilize the space the way that they do. So that's how come Sears could have the corporate campus they had, and Medline and McDonald's. Those are kind of the notable ones. Allstate had a huge corporate campus that they just now sold for big money, and now they're putting distribution facilities on that land up like by 294 in Willow. Mm-hmm. So, giving it open space treatment gives it, some people have called it corporate welfare, which I guess it kind of is, because we're talking about corporate campuses and we're talking about golf courses, and it is, corporate people who are who are benefiting from this, and the public doesn't get to walk onto this property, keep in mind. So, it's always been something that the watchdogs don't quite like or understand. Why are we giving away all these tax dollars for land that the public can't access? Indeed, usually they're totally fenced in with iron fences.
Right.
So,
Interesting.
but open space is an interesting option if you have more than 10 acres and it's not developed and you want to hold it and you want to use it for open space purposes. It's not a bad option to pursue that for the property. The one downside with open space is that there is a 3-year look back. So once you stop using it for open space purposes, so once that golf course owner finally sells it to the subdivision developer who puts 200 homes on it, once that happens, there will be tax liability for the 3 years preceding the time when the property stopped being used for open space purposes, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the bill is in the amount that covers the delta between what the taxes were when the bills were issued and paid versus what the tax bills would have been if the property was not being assessed at the open space rates.
Okay. I grew up not far from the Kemper campus. I don't know if that's still around.
Is that educational though?
No, it was science. I think they have a big golf course there.
Oh, the golf course would definitely be open space.
Yeah. What financial benefits do the preferential assessments offer property owners?
Well, I had somebody who had had farm classification fall off of a small parcel. Maybe it was a 2-acre parcel, and the tax bill went from $1,200 a year to $65,000 a year because the land was located adjacent to a newly developed shopping center. And so the assessor put the land value in at the same commercial rate per square foot as the adjacent commercial center had. So I said to the client, I said, well, what happened there? And they said, well, the farmer just didn't plant it and didn't harvest it. And the assessor noticed, and then they lost the classification. And I said, well, tell them to get out there and plant it. And the client said, well, they said they can't. And so I went out there to take a look, because sometimes you just have to put your boots on the ground and see what's going on with a property. And there was this massive dirt pile on this acre and a half that was behind the huge newly constructed commercial buildings. And nobody could plant this. You know what I mean? It was so it was a really just bad construction planning that, the owner of the center hired a construction company that didn't understand the ramifications of piling up that dirt where it was and causing that classification to fall off of that acreage.
Wow. Pile of dirt.
Off
by a pile of dirt.
Yeah. So for farm, it has to be either cultivated or it has to be grazing land or, place where you're doing animal husbandry or dairy. Or the newest fad with agriculture is bees. So if you put a couple of hives on the property and you register it with the state, you're supposed to be able to bring the land under agricultural classification. I've advised at least 20 people to do this. So far, nobody has. So I don't know. I know it's working because my assessing official colleagues tell me that they know it is happening. But so far, I have not personally had a client do this, even though I regularly recommend that they try it. So if anyone's out there who has done this, please email me. I always love to learn. And so yeah, then it goes under the productivity index rather than the value for what it could sell for.
Okay. And are there specific statutes or regulations that property owners should be aware of as far as preferential assessments?
Yeah, there is a statutory deadline for applying, and it depends on which program you're interested in. If it's open space, the deadline I think is at the end of June. If it's something else, the statutory deadline is just going to be in that provision of the property tax code. And I would say, the law is always changing. Right now, there's a bill that has some legs where they're going to change the developer's relief statute, which is another preferential assessment. There is another category of preferential assessment called developer's relief, and that's basically to hold the taxes down to a certain level so that the developers have some awareness and some visibility on what the tax liability will be for them while they are developing a new subdivision or a new industrial park or whatever it is. So once the plat is recorded, the assessors have to hold that value steady until something is substantially complete or sold. So that's another preferential assessment.
What is the process for applying for a preferential assessment?
The Illinois Department of Revenue has specific forms depending on which preferential assessment you're seeking. And so you would just basically find out when the deadline is, you'd fill out the form completely, and you would submit it to the supervisor of assessments in the county where the property is located.
How can property owners ensure they're in compliance with the necessary requirements? Is there a checklist that they can get to make sure that they know if they're compliant or not?
I think the hardest one to get is there's a conservation stewardship plan, and you would have to go on the state of Illinois has a unit of government that handles those, and they want quite a bit from you now in terms of clearing out invasive species and, not doing certain things and doing certain other things. And so it's a 10-year plan, and you can get meaningful tax relief by pursuing this preferential assessment. But you can't just let the land grow wild anymore like you used to in the good old days. Like now they want you to have, skin in the game. So they want you to do something that will facilitate the rebuilding of the natural ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So native plants, and get rid of plants that don't belong here and things like that. So that's harder. I mean, you have to look at the actual website. The checklist is enormous, and then they give you an approval for the plan. And then for 10 years, you have the property tax relief, and you're supposed to be keeping the invasive species out. And then in 10 years, then you're up for renewal on the plan. And then with the conservation easements, which is another thing, you're granting an easement to somebody in perpetuity, and then you can get meaningful tax relief there as well. And then if your property should come out of that, then there's a 10-year look back with a 10% interest attached. So you really have to be mindful of getting involved in this and understanding what the financial fallout could be if you come out of these plans, unexpectedly.
You're talking about the ecosystem thing. Is that kind of why you suggest the bees, just because that's such a big deal now, like because of the shortage?
We do have a real problem with pollination here in Illinois and elsewhere.
Sure.
And so I think a lot of people downstate are aware of that. The closer you are to Chicago, the less aware of it they are. But yeah, I think that's why there is that incentive that if you are taking care of bees and you're promoting pollination and the bees in general, you can bring your property under agricultural classification.
What are the most common reasons you've seen property owners denied preferential assessments?
Sometimes the supervisor assessments just doesn't have a great understanding of what the purpose of the preferential assessment statute is, or they don't think it might, they think it might not qualify. One time I applied for preferential assessment on a amusement park that was not operating, and they had the owner who was not operating it at the time had kind of drawn a survey which carved out all the minor buildings. And so we got a real count of what the actual acreage was. And so I pursued it there. The county didn't like the idea, and they did not want to move forward to see if the next level of appeal would agree with me or not. So it ended there. But at the same time, I think it was the very same tax year, I also had a closed down small college in the northern suburbs. And I pursued open space on that. Basically, it's the same exact method, and the county there did grant it. So it is one of those things that there are 102 counties, and there's many assessing officials in Illinois. They don't all read the property tax code the same,
Mm-hmm.
and the same facts in one county in the same exact tax year could result in a different outcome than what you might find in just a county or two away.
And what do property owners need to do to maintain the preferential assessment status? Is it something that they can lose? Is it a benefit they can lose?
Yeah, they can. For many of them, they get an affidavit annually that they have to fill out and say that the use has not changed since last year. And with the conservation easements and the conservation resource plans, from what I understand, they review those after 10 years, and they decide if they're going to renew it.
Okay, that's 10 years is a pretty good amount of time.
Yeah, but I mean, they want a lot from you too, sometimes, depending on what is going on with the property when you ask for it.
Interesting stuff. Nothing I knew about before I talked to you. So thank you for the insight, and thank you for joining us on Devine Intervention, shedding light on Illinois property tax with Nora Devine. To connect with Nora and the team, visit thedivinelawgroup.com, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Nora, it's always great having you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.